Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Unfiltered Vet Discussions. My name is Kelly, and I am joined by David and Cody today. You can see our bios and happy faces on our website, Unfiltered Vet Discussions. You can also join our socials there. Please leave comments, likes, happy faces, as well as listen to this podcast on YouTube and any of the podcast platforms listed on our website. So with that being said, today we are going to be looking at inflationary issues, pricing, how hospitals are digging into that. Do they raise prices? Do they lower prices? So Cody, I'm going to throw it over to you to start because you are actually actively looking at this in your own clinics at the moment. So what are you doing?
Yeah, so we had started pre-podcast, just for some context, talking about the general economy across North America and the recent decrease in the interest rates and how that's going to affect the economy from a broad perspective. And Kelly had brought up the inflated grocery store prices and how those need to come down in order for people to actually feel, like this inflation situation is in control. So it's not decreasing the rate of inflation being enough, but will we actually see a deflation of prices in the grocery store? So this is a very interesting topic that I've been thinking a lot about is what happened over the last 2 years within veterinary medicine when it comes to inflation. I've looked at a lot of different graphs and charts and reports, and it appears that veterinary medicine as a service and product, in comparison to many other categories, household categories, seem to outpace pretty much everybody. Some reports are showing, somewhere between 25 and 30% increase in veterinary products and services over the last 24 months. Why is that is, one topic of debate. Were we behind on pricing? Were we behind on products and services and not priced appropriately? And it took something like a massive economic meltdown, recession, slowdown, whatever you want to call this last 2 years, in order for veterinarians to start pricing more appropriately. I see some nods of agreement there. So I think there was some.
I think there's a big pool, a big population of practices that is appropriate. It's a melting pot of variables. But I think there were, and I see it still, many practices that are behind. And I had a practice in West Virginia, I think I mentioned in one of the last podcasts, didn't charge an exam fee. It was just the vaccine. So it's such a broad spectrum. But where you're going, I think there are folks and practices that have been pushing the envelope within that as well.
Well, for sure. And I don't think it was nefarious on anybody's side. This has been hard to operate veterinary hospitals over the last 2 years through this inflationary period. It's been hard in terms of our costs going up a high amount, not just in terms of our vendor costs, which is something we will have to talk about. There's no question. The cost for our pharmaceuticals have gone up. The cost for our consumables for blood analytics have gone up. My monthly bank payment, it has gone up dramatically, right? Owning 3 de novos, I'm pretty well leveraged. So those interest rates, that cuts your bottom line pretty hard. So you get to a point during this time where you start talking about price increases. And I think, David, we've traditionally in veterinary medicine, if you were very astute, you were at the very least increasing costs or increasing your prices to inflation, right? But there was a lot of practices that didn't. I'm sure you've seen very astute veterinarians doing quarterly price increases of 0.5% or 1%, and they do it consistently and religiously, and they stay on top of this. But there's others that haven't done price increases for 4 or 5 years or 10 or 15 years, right? We
Yeah, or
see.
they only make the annual. Predominantly, we see, because now in doing valuations, we're asking these questions whereas before we didn't. We ask, how often are you adjusting fees? Almost all, it's only annual. And
Exactly.
it's maybe 3 or 5% because that's what we always do.
Right.
And I think adding in there too, as costs are going up, is we've seen in the practices we're appraising in the 9 states I cover, a definite push to paying a living wage to the support staff the last 12, 24 months as minimum wage has gone up. So, that's a variable in there
Yeah.
as well, adding to the economic
But
issues that you're talking about.
what's the living wage? Like I was reading in the United States, at least, it used to be less than 100 cities had $1 million homes, or starter homes were $1 million. Now there's over like 225 cities in the United States where the price of a home is so expensive. And then they were listing, what do you need to make salary wise to buy a home? Right. And they're like, well, you need to make between $85,000 and $150,000 to buy your first home. And so what is a living wage?
Well, and even just that how that's changed. So, as you guys know, I'm super transparent and have no secrets. So, all of my support staff starts at $21 an hour. So in Canada, that's $6 above minimum wage. And all of my technologists start at $30 an hour. All my veterinarians start at $110,000 an hour, or $110,000 a year salary. And we were paying we were first in class in our geography in terms of paying support staff. That was, quite a bit more that a new graduate registered veterinary technologist would make $30 an hour. So over the last 24 months, even being a top level wage provider within our area, I felt that pressure of that. Now my team members are having a harder and harder time making ends meet, and you're looking at a consumer price index increase of say 7% over 2023. The math is easy. You've got to do at least a 7% price increase to be able to justify those raises, right? And I know the profitability of a lot of practices is just, tanked because that's the differential, right? That you've got to find that money somewhere. So I've been really, really interested in trying to take a modern approach in price increases. And I think there's still a lot of tools that need to be created out there for modern practice owners to really analyze. I think gone are the days of global price increases. I don't think that we should just be at it. It's great at the end of the year if you do a price increase. But I don't think you should just be clicking 2.5% and then walking away from your computer. I think you have to analyze each line item constantly to see do prices need to increase based off of the amount of time. A perfect example is this subcutaneous fluids. So the administration of subcutaneous fluids, that bag of fluids probably cost $8. And we charge about 90 to be able to administer, these fluids. Why is it 90? We'll come and watch the procedure. If it's a big dog, that's 3 staff members for at least 10 minutes that are standing there restraining this dog and administering these fluids. You have to quantify appropriately. We have to make sure that we're being effective in quantifying the time spent in some of these services. So I think differential price increases are definitely something that we need to get better at, and to say like, okay, this service is more elastic, this service is less elastic, and these ones are price shopped, and we need to be cognizant of that differential pricing. But the big question that I have for everyone, and because I'm doing it myself, is are we going to see services and products deflate? I'm doing that. I'm doing a price increase right now, and as I'm going through my price increase, I'm actually decreasing some services. I've decreased my cat neuter. I've decreased my dental cleaning. I've decreased my nail trim. I've decreased my anal gland expressions. I've decreased a lot of the things that I either think people are having a harder time accessing, and I'm seeing us do these services less and less, or I'm decreasing it because I think that we need to just take a smarter approach to be able to help our customers find efficiencies. So are we going to see decreased veterinary services across the next 12 months? Are people going to get so slow in their appointment books in some geographies that they need to pull a lever, and that lever is a price decrease? It's a fascinating thing to think about.
So before we started doing this podcast, we chit chat like normal, right? All of us are just sitting and talking. And one of the things that you told me that I thought was really interesting that you didn't bring up, especially with your dentals, is you're doing subcategories within a category. So like your dental, instead of like, we just do dental, it's one price, it's one service, it's one-stop shop. If you want a dental, this is what it is. You're looking at breaking that down, correct? Like, so what are you looking at there? I thought that was an interesting take.
Yeah, so absolutely. So our typical cohats, or a comprehensive oral health examination and treatment would be $900 all in. Okay, so that's going to get you your X-rays, your general anesthetic, your sedation, your catheter, your fluids, your monitoring, the scaling and polishing, everything all together would be $900, right? But there wasn't a difference for if that was a lot of work or not as much work. So if you have a dog that just has some moderate tartar, but doesn't have, a dumpster mouth where teeth are falling out everywhere, shouldn't we be thinking about differential pricing for rewarding that customer that this is actually going to be less work instead of just averaging it all together? Because those really hard dentals, those should be priced higher. And then those easy dentals should be priced lower, but we just lump them all together and pick an average price, and that's not really fair to the customer. And that makes it more difficult for my veterinarians to make a recommendation, because if they think that there's only $700 of value for this customer to, get this dental done maybe a little bit earlier, they're hesitant to bring that up, because my vets aren't sure if that's $900 in value that they're providing. But if it's $700 for a more simple cohat, they want to bring that up to the customer. They think that's great value. They just don't think it's a great value when it's a pretty simple thing. So they want to do more dentals. They want to do more preventative health. But sometimes the cost is that barrier. So we need to be smart, and maybe we need to start splitting things out a little bit more and creating some subcategories, which is not a new concept in veterinary medicine by any means. Right. But you need to be dynamic, I think, is the biggest take home, right? Like, just because it worked for you last year doesn't mean it's going to work for you this year. And you need to be malleable and be able to, be creative in this thinking. And it takes a lot of time, and it's really hard. And I'm fortunate as a veterinary practice owner that I practice part-time. So I do have capacity to think about these things.
I was just going to say, I think you're above average in that you make time to think about these things, because I think the practitioners I see more often than not, there's minimal time to work on the business. It's always in the business. I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that. And that day never comes, because it's just fire to fire, activity to activity, this client, that staff member doing what has to be done right now. And a more comprehensive service fee review just never happens, and they fall behind, and profitability suffers, cash flow can suffer. Not every practice, but I think encouraging that owners to make the time to work on the business, not in it, like Peter advocates, and the E-Myth and everything else. But when you're paying attention, then you can see those things and spend the time in that direction. I am curious about feed deflation and the practices that are out there that have been pushing the envelope, and maybe some of the larger, even corporate practices, are they going to pull back and become more competitive in some of these markets because of that? Or leave it high because they can't find enough associates. So losing some clients may not be a bad thing. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, it does feel like a double-edged sword, right? When you're not feeling it, let's say you're not hitting that 20% profitability target, and your books are slowing, decreasing prices to try to garner, increased profitability is always tricky, right? Like that's a really
Right.
scary lever to pull. Just on the time side, I thought you would find this interesting. I know we're getting close to wrapping up, but I did an experiment where I just pulled out an Excel spreadsheet of all of my prices, all of my services, all of my products, and I asked ChatGPT to analyze it and tell me what it thought. And the result was actually fascinating. So it did a full analysis of my pricing and broke everything down into subcategories of elasticity. And then I analyzed those to see if I thought it was right, and it was spooky right. So it broke down elasticity. It asked me some questions about how the practice is, where we're at, where we're going, what the growth is. And then it made differential recommendations based off of the elasticity of the products and services. And not only that, it then, I said, well, that looks great. I'll put that into another spreadsheet. It made another spreadsheet for me, did the price adjustments for me with the calculations, and made it a nice, pretty bow. And now you've got it like literally in 30 seconds. You just had a superhuman AI do a price analysis on your pricing. Yes, you still need to go through it, but it was wild compared to how long that usually takes me to do.
Did it include in the data? I'm wondering what the outcome would be if you also in the spreadsheet you uploaded included frequency. Was that in there?
So that wasn't in there, but it absolutely would. Like it's the more there, or if you started doing things like, for services, putting in like estimated values of time for support staff and units of veterinary time.
That's cool.
Which brings up a bigger question that I would love to see. I haven't seen any across the veterinary industry, but what an incredible potential continuing education event that could be, where we talk about utilization of AI in veterinary business management and take all these little case studies that us mad scientists have been working on and playing with ChatGPT to show, like, look, you could do a price adjustment in literally 30 seconds with these prompts and this base level spreadsheet. It's scary how often I use it for business management for those simple things, even just asking it to update a spreadsheet. It's phenomenal because I'm terrible at spreadsheets. I'll be the first to admit it. So having a little AI buddy that can just formulate everything for me is spectacular.
That's cool. Thanks for sharing that. That's pretty
all
neat.
at the same time. Now I want to go try it, right? Like you just want to put up your pricing sheet and go, well, ChatGPT, what do you think about websites, right?
Exactly.
It's not like a specific product base like yours, but it's other people make websites. So we'll see. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Well, we covered the gamut here today, ending with AI and spreadsheets. But since Peter isn't here to wrap up, I'll give my best Peter shot at this. But we covered, think about, I think what you were saying, Cody, is you need to be fluid and flexible. Don't just think you need to, like you said earlier when we weren't on air, 3% markup, call it a across the board. We're not in a place where we can be that easy. We actually have to dig in line item by line item. We have to think about the value of the services we're offering We need to think about our client base and our patient base and what they're going through in the demographics. We're seeing that in marketing. Some places are great and their books are full, and other places are like the people we serve, they're skipping a meal just to make their rents and their mortgages. So you got to be cognitive of who you're serving and who you're supporting at the time. And keep doing it for probably the next 12 months, 24 months. And don't be afraid. I was hearing you, Cody, say to drop a price. As scary as that may be, maybe that is the best answer, is doing the opposite of what you think is correct. So we'll keep an eye on that here and maybe have this conversation again, because the world is still changing. So until next time, please join us at Unfiltered Vet Discussions. We will see you then. Talk to you all later.
See y'all.